Welcome to Conversations with the Pastor, the hippest show in the Pacific Northwest, where we talk about current events and things that matter to you. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Now listen, this is an interactive conversation. That means we need you to ask questions via Facebook or pastorconversations at the NBCF.org. Don't miss out. Now let's start the conversation. Pastor?
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Conversations with the Pastor. And yes, it is a conversation, which means you got to talk back to me. You got to holler at me. And you got to do it in the way that we did it back in the days when we had phone books, yellow and white pages where you had to let your fingers do the walking. Except this time it's got to be across those keys on your keyboard so you can send in your questions, your comments, your concern. So I want you to listen closely and then formulate those questions and shoot them to us so that we can talk back to you. But before I introduce my illustrious and iconic guest for tonight, just something that makes me go, like most of you right now, I wish I could hear Sam Cooke's old song, I wish somebody would come and ease my troubled mind. I wish my baby would come and ease my troubled mind, because when I see what is happening at the epicenter of our government in Washington, D.C., and the re-election and re-inauguration of Donald J. Trump as now the 47th president of these United States, and he has come out of the box firing on all cylinders and all the craziness that he said he was going to do. I told people he's not playing crazy. He's crazy. He's going to do it. He's crazy enough to do the crazy things that he said he was going to do. And one of the things that by executive order, he has attempted, though I'm sure there'll be court challenges, to change the ICE policy of not arresting people in houses of worship and in hospitals, emergency rooms, or in schools. That they didn't want people afraid to go to school, afraid to go to the hospital or to our houses of worship, that these are sacred spaces, these are places that are off limits. But the Trump administration today has said that now they're giving ICE the authority to go ahead and pursue these people even in those places. Now, truth be told, the ICE already had legal authority if a person had an adjudicated warrant for their arrest, if they were accused of a violent crime. They already could go get those persons at a school or a hospital or a house of worship. Although even in executing those, they were respectful enough of the people in those houses of worship and the active worship to wait till after the benediction and catch them outside, so as not to disturb that, or not to disturb the practice of an operating room, or not even traumatize children. But then a child would not have an adjudicated warrant for a violent crime, so schools became kind of irrelevant in that. But what the Trump administration is saying that we're going to be strong-armed, we're going to be over the top, we're going to be excessive, and we're going to be conspicuous in how we track down, drag down, and shake down people who are in the country, quote-unquote, illegally. It causes me to shiver because one does not have to read very far into the pages of any narrative regarding the Third Reich and the Gestapo that was unleashed to go after the declared internal enemies of the German people, of Hitler's Third Reich, the Jewish community. They drug them out of synagogues. They secured them, accosted them in hospitals. They accosted them in schools. There was no place off limits. And I don't think most American people, or at least decent people, do not want to be akin to the tactics of one of the biggest blots on the pages of history, and that is that we are behaving in like mind with the Gestapo. We're better than that. My mama used to say it's not only what you do, but it's how you do it. And to do things in a way that line us up with some of the worst actors in history is not making us great now, down the road, again. It's making us maniacal. And then I also believe that it's just good to hear and heed the words of Jesus, who said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you," to make such brutality normative. It can come back to bite you. You can set a fire, as people are learning in California, but you can't necessarily control how the winds are going to blow. And you can start a fire, and it can end up burning things that those who set the fire never intended for it to burn. I hope and pray that the American people who are watching this, regardless of how they voted, will insist that this nation, in whatever ways are available to us as a body politic, that even as in the majority of those who chose to vote in this last election voted for Donald Trump, that at some point in us, something will rise up and say, this is a bridge too far. Because there's a bottomless pit of debauchery that the human spirit can go down when people have no bottom. And I'm not sure in this country we have a bottom. And history is the story of the fact that even the greatest societies, even the Germany that gave us an Albert Einstein, even the Germany that gave us a Beethoven, even the Germany that gave us a Martin Luther, who tacked his 95 Theses on the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg in 1517, and started what we have since called the Protestant Reformation, out of which my own Blessed Baptist Church denomination has come. That same Germany, when it did not watch itself, resorted to one of the most vulgar episodes in human history. And as a result, every school child in Germany now every year must visit the Holocaust museums as a part of their ongoing education to burn an indelible impression upon the psyches of those young people in their formative years, that this is who we can be unless we intentionally choose to be other. For the whole purpose of history is to make sure we don't repeat our worst mistakes. I hope we will hear and heed the wisdom of another good society gone very bad when it had no bottom. Well, with that, let me switch gears here, and I want to introduce my guest, or should I say present, because here in the Pacific Northwest, you cannot introduce Charlie James, because if you don't know him, you are not from the Pacific Northwest, particularly if you have any melon hue in your skin. He is a living legend. Charlie, welcome to Conversations with the Pastor.
Doc, I am glad to be here. Enjoyed being here.
I am so excited about having you here. I've just enjoyed knowing you and chatting with you from time to time, and the work that you've done over the past 26 years since my wife Shell and I returned to the Pacific Northwest in 1999 when I was pastoring the Mount Zion Baptist Church. Our children were going to St. Therese when we came back to the area, and then our daughter matriculated in the Holy Names, our son into O'Day, and then later on to Kennedy, and then I matriculated from Mount Zion over here to start New Beginnings. It'd be 20 years come here in August. But through all that journey, one of the things in the Pacific Northwest that's been a constant is Charlie James, getting the story, telling the truth, being on point. Every significant community event, it seemed like you there. The sun gonna rise in the east, set in the west, and Charlie James is gonna be there with something to say about anything worth talking about.
I try my best, Doc.
Tell me, tell us who Charlie James is.
You know, the best way to explain me really is a sharecropper son. It's probably the best way of doing it. I was born on a sharecropping farm in Missouri, 1950. We had to escape the farm in the middle of the night. We went up to Michigan. So I grew up at the end of the Underground Railroad, 12 miles from Notre Dame, right up there in southern Michigan. So that environment pretty much shaped who I am in many ways. The level of racism that existed in that environment was oppressive. And what you had is that you had a whole lot of black villages in the woods. You know, I lived in Hatcherville. That was an all-black village. You know, there was all type of other villages, you know, Jonesville, Edenville, Xville, all these villages.
Up in Missouri?
No, up in Michigan.
In Michigan?
This is in southern Michigan, northern Illinois.
Black villages in Michigan?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. This is in southern Michigan, or in Indiana, that whole area. Mm-hmm. These are people who fled the South and came up to the end of the Underground Railroad and moved out into the wilderness area and created these little black villages. Okay. So that's who we were, and that's how I grew up. And so I was always rooted into a black environment in a very direct sort of way. So I didn't have to get that. It was just part of who I was. I was that last generation that sat around the campfire and the old man told stories to the kids. You know what I mean? I was that last generation that got a chance to see that and to experience that whole environment. So, when I left high school and went to college and that thing, I was rooted into, you know, the movement.
Where did you go to college, and what were you planning on becoming at that time?
Well, that in itself is an interesting story. The principal called me to his office as my sophomore year and told me that no matter what I did, I was going to get no more than a D.
Whoa.
Didn't matter.
No matter what you did?
D was all I was going to get. They wanted me to go to Vietnam and die because of my activism at the high school level. That's what they told me. So I graduated from high school with a D average. And then I had to, of course, try to figure out how to get to junior college before I got drafted. And so I went to junior college. I got $50 from a friend. I enrolled in junior college. And I went to the draft board that Friday morning and got a deferment. And the bus was leaving that Saturday morning heading to Detroit. All right, so I slid in just under the wire. I went to junior college in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Came into a city that was 90% black, no black elected officials. None.
90% black, but no black elected officials.
None. Zero. All right, when I walked in. And it's like, what's going on here? Now, fortunately for me, Mayor Richard Hatcher, the very first black mayor in recent times, was only like 80 miles away. All right? He was up for his re-election campaign. His PR man came to our college. I mean, Dick's PR man was hired at our junior college. Mm-hmm. He met me and says, "You need to meet these," because I was a journalist student there. Okay. So he says, "You need to meet these guys, man, the way you talk." He took me to Gary, Indiana, and introduced me to the premier black political organization in the whole nation, right there in Gary, Indiana. So I went to work for Dick, getting him reelected. We got him reelected, ended up getting Secretary of State elected of Michigan, black Secretary of State as well. And when all of this ended, back in 71, my mother told me that I need to come home and she needed to talk to me. So I come home and she said the police had came by and told her that if I didn't leave the state of Michigan, they was going to kill me. All right, so I had to make a decision. She said, "No, you ain't gonna make. I'm gonna make that decision. I can't sleep if you stay here."
Mama said, "My baby gotta go."
You gotta go. And so I left there and came. Now, when I graduated from junior college, I graduated with a Ford Foundation Scholar, as a Ford Foundation Scholar, and I can go anywhere in the nation. Okay, so I came to the University of Washington. My ex-wife was from here, so I came out here because of that. And so that's how I ended up in the University of Washington in Seattle in 1971, a jaded activist at 19 years old. And I've been trying to do what I can here ever since.
So you went from a systematically determined D student to a Ford Scholar
Right.
when given an opportunity to be tested and treated and evaluated fairly.
That's right.
And then you ended up being an activist journalist on the run.
Yes, right. Then, of course, I graduated University of Washington with 2 BAs, and I also was a third world editor of University of Washington Daily and BSU president as well. I was a founder of the BSU at the junior college, too, that I was at.
Wow.
Okay. And so that BSU was the impetus to transform that town into a black-controlled town. Now, I found out something, though. You can have black power, but if you don't control the economics, you're still in trouble.
That's right.
Okay.
Some people say that the political leaders are nothing but middle managers of the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I learned a very valuable lesson there.
So you land here in Seattle at 19 years of age?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've been here in the Pacific Northwest 50 years, 50 some odd years?
55 years.
55 years doing journalism. What has that journey been like over the last 55 years, being a journalist, a black journalist, who with a social justice mandate in the Pacific Northwest? What have been the challenges? What have been the triumphs?
It's been a challenge, but it's also been a very interesting journal. The thing about the Pacific Northwest that's unique is that it's one of those jewels that was hidden from the rest of the country. The level of racism was fairly low, compared to where I came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I came out here. So I was able to do some things out here that we probably couldn't do as well in Michigan in that environment.
Such as?
I could go places and write stories here more freer than I could in Michigan. There's environments in Michigan that you had to go. You had to take some people with you to make sure you got there safely. If you wanted to go in there,
and your car might blow up the next day.
Yeah. You talking about a whole different type of thing there.
Yeah.
I came here. I was strapped down with gun and everything else because that's the environment I came out.
Okay.
I had to take those things off when I came out here, so people can get comfortable with me. It took me.
You were holstered up for real.
Yeah. It took me a while to
calm down.
Yes. That was the environment I came into. So I had to chill for a minute and take a deep breath. Yeah.
So, but what have been like the because you're still a guy who gets the story, who wants to talk about the stuff that others maybe want to just let pass or don't want to ruffle the feathers. So the racism hasn't been the way it's been in the South, but how did it manifest itself here to make you realize we still got work to do, even here?
Well, power is going to do its thing no matter where you're at, okay? And whether or not you're overt racist or covert racist, you're going to use that as a power play to do what you want to do. And that's what you have witnessed here is that you witness everywhere else. The different thing about the Scandinavians that created this area was they're so far north is that they didn't have nothing to do with the slave trade. And since they didn't have nothing to do with the slave trade, they didn't have a lot of attitudes about black folks as those Europeans who did have something to do with the slave trade. And so when brothers came out here, they ran into and kind of slightly more of an open door policy in that sense. But the racists came too. They came too, and they're still coming. Okay, so it never got to this was not a utopia, and it never will get to be a utopia. But what we tried to do is to create an environment. That's why we tried to name this Martin Luther King County. It's the only county named for Martin Luther King in the whole nation. And now we've got to imbue this county with the attributes of Martin Luther King. It's that piece right there that's really bothers me about this missing in this whole equation. You name something for a man, but you don't imbue the county with his ethics, with his values, with his justice, with all of those type of things. And that's what we at right now.
You give symbolism without substance.
That's right. That's right. And we've got to break through that somehow and try to do something with what we've done. the Martin Luther King Memorial Park. I was proud of that because it's the only park on the street named for Martin Luther King and the county named for Martin Luther King in the whole nation. You know what I mean? I mean, we got something here that we haven't been able to really, you know, and I talk to Eddie Wright about this all the time. It's being able to take it and turn it into something more real than just a name.
Yeah.
Yeah, than just a name. And quite frankly, 80% of the people in Martin Luther King County still don't know it's Martin Luther King County. They don't know.
You think so?
Yeah, I know that. I know it for a fact.
So they think King County is just King County, but,
King County.
But not necessarily Martin Luther King.
You never hear the public, you never hear it said, no one says Martin Luther King County in public. The whites kept saying, we know it's Martin Luther King County, we just gonna call it King County. We're gonna leave that Martin LutherKing over here. And they did that deliberately. They left Martin Luther over here.
It's interesting because I always get amused when I go to these public events, city and county, and they start the program by always thanking our Native American brothers and sisters for their contribution to our society and so forth, which I always think, do the Native Americans really appreciate that? Because if you come in my house and put me out and then sit down with your family and before dinner you bow your heads and or send me a letter saying thank you for your contribution to my family's dinner tonight, I don't think I would necessarily favorably receive a thank you for something that you took from me forcibly.
I agree.
I think that gesture is intended by white folks to exonerate themselves and make themselves feel less guilty, but I'm not quite sure Native Americans feel flattered.
Not at all.
Would you thank them for something that they didn't offer?
They didn't offer. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting that they feel comfortable enough thanking Native Americans for what they stole from them, but they don't feel comfortable enough saying the full name.
That's right. They never will. They won't say the full name. They would just say King County, all right? And it's very deliberate. I mean, it's not and they made it clear to us when we forced the name change on them. They didn't want it, huh?
I'm gonna have to start listening closely to that. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't want it, okay? And we made them change the name, because the king that we had here was a slaveholder.
Yes.
He didn't have a good record. I mean, so it's hard to hold on to that.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to do it, but they wanted to keep the concept separate from Martin Luther King if they can.
Yes.
But we've got something unique here, and I've been trying to figure out for a while how to take this thing we got, and really I think that every year there should be a Martin Luther King Justice Forum held in Martin Luther King County, and people from all over the nation should come here and have a real discussion about social justice issues right here in Martin Luther King County. I really think that would be the appropriate way of letting the world know that Martin Luther King County is real and bringing some substance to the county itself.
That may be something we need to work on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about journalism in the country. I think it's one of the salient points in the collision of powers in this country going on now. As Donald Trump resumes the presidency of this country, and as we all know, one of the things he's quite intentional about is diminishing the regard that people have for the press. It is textbook for demagogues and despots who want to live and be treated as if they're above the law. Because we know that in a free democratic society, that the press really is the default fourth arm of government.
That's right.
Because it's supposed to parse the issues, the actions of the judicial, the executive, the legislative branch, and industry, those corporate powers, on behalf of the people, to parse their activities in the public interest, a fact-based, clear-eyed, objective rendering of those truths to protect the public interest. That's why you cannot have a free society, a democracy, without a free, independent press. And any compromise to the freedom of the press, anything that lends itself to the reluctancy of the press to parse those activities, is the beginning of the end of that republic.
I agree.
And so Hitler did it, Mussolini did it, in all countries. Castro did it in Cuba. And they always they do it in every country. It happens in Venezuela, all of them. It's just what happens. So the question becomes, how do you see what's going on now, what has been going on with the press, with media, and even impacts of social media? Maybe we'll hold that one, but how do you see the health of the press, the free press in the United States at this time?
Okay. 10 years ago, there were 500 billionaires. Now there's 2,500 billionaires in America. Those billionaires have effectively bought our free press up. The press is no longer family owned. It's corporate owned now. And so when you get the corporate media, you get a slant that makes it easy for Donald Trump to get elected. They don't have to come at him. They just ignore things that he do and let it slide. And they've done that very effectively, which is why what you're doing is so important. Because the avenues that we're using right now to really get information to people is through podcasts. It's through this medium. It's through the independent kind of medias out there who are trying to give people some real truths that's not tainted by corporate profits. Okay, and that's the battle right now. How do you reach your people with the information that they really need without having to use the corporate media? One of the things I've found, even when I had my own newspaper, is that you can't put pressure on the society and go to it to get its money to do it while you're doing it.
That's true.
Okay, you can't go to the man and says, "I want to beat you up, but I need you to help pay me to do it."
Follow the money.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so sooner or later, if you're a very forceful press, your money gonna dry up. We don't have the money in our own community to support a free press. So we've got to go outside of our community to get the resources to keep that free press alive.
Yes.
And when we do that, we're gonna have to compromise some integrity at some point down the road. If we want to grow, we want to thrive, and we want to stay, keep our head above water. That's a reality of capitalism in America. We're the only group of people in America that can't go offshore and get money. We can't go offshore and get a dime from nobody in the world, and we can't get it in America, all right? And so if you can't go offshore and get it, you can't get it in America, you're caught in a very interesting bind, and that's where we're at right now. We've got to figure out how to break through this box that we're in. But corporate media now controls the game.
Yes.
And if they didn't control the game, Donald Trump would never have come close to not only getting elected, but even thinking about running for a second term if it wasn't corporate media, okay, allowing this to take place, okay? And so that's where we're at. And I watch journalism. I watch it change over the years to the point that it's almost unrecognizable now. I'm watching what people are saying who call themselves journalists, but they're not journalists, they're commentators. They're pushing a very specific agenda in a very specific way, and Fox is obvious about it, but there are some junior Foxes out there who are not as obvious about it.
I consider Fox not even news, just propaganda. It's a propaganda channel.
Straight up.
It's the journalistic arm of the Republican Party.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
What do you think about CNN? Do you think it's fair and balanced?
CNN is like a tug of war. It takes two steps forward, and then it takes a step back. It's a tug of war. It's almost like they don't have the right to really go full bore. They can touch on the outskirts of things, but they can't get into the depth of the subject matter. And you see them wrestling with it all the time. You see them people wanting to say more, but they know they can't say more because they see that little light above them saying, no, we ain't going there, huh? So that's what corporate media does to you. That's what it does to you. It puts you in a restraint where you really cannot tell the whole truth, okay, to the public.
Are the days of, Walter Cronkite, they said he was the most trusted man in America. He was kind of like Joe Friday on Dragnet, just the facts. So they gave you a factual rendering of the story that was out there, and whatever your opinion was, there was a fact baseline to the story.
Right. That's right.
And you could have whatever feelings you wanted to about the story, but there was an agreement on what the facts were.
That's right.
Maybe not on what the outcomes should be, but there was an agreement on yesterday was 41 degrees. Mm-hmm. Nobody was arguing it was 70, and someone else arguing that it was freezing. There was a factual temperature yesterday. So someone was telling the truth, somebody's lying. Mm-hmm. In today's news, you know, as you say, you can have your own opinion, you can't have your own facts. People say that everybody has their own facts. Or should I say, there is a part of the news, a part of the electorate that just says whatever they want people to believe.
Right.
And confuses the public, or at least gives the part of the public that agrees with their ideology an excuse to go along with them. Because sometimes I don't believe people really believe the lies that they're being told. Unless you live on Mars, there's some things you know certain things happened. But I think if people will lie in public, people take the lie and run with it because it gives them an excuse to get the outcomes. It's like watching a football game and you see that guy's out of bounds, but you for the other team and you want to win.
That's right.
And if someone says, well, I think he was in bounds, you go along with it because you want to win. You go argue the call, not because you can't look at it and see he was out of bounds, but you need that call to secure the victory. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the modern media, then what needs to happen so that we can get back to fair, balanced, fact-checked journalism? I mean, when Zunderberg goes in to try and coddle access to the Oval, he goes down to Mar-a-Lago and says, okay, I will not only deconstruct my DEI, and so we'll be racist, you know, but we also are going to stop fact-checking. So my social media platforms are going to have all kind of bogus stuff on it, and so you're polluting the country. Do we understand the impacts on a democracy when you don't establish a fact base to any public discourse?
You've got a situation where you have a white American population that no longer can afford democracy. It's too expensive. Democracy.
Can you say that again? I've been saying that for a couple of years. People thought I was just race baiting.
Yeah, they can't afford democracy. It's too expensive.
It's in the way
yes.
of the promotion and preservation of white supremacy.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's in the way. So it's based on majority rule. Mm-hmm. As long as you got majority rule, you can play the democracy game. Mm-hmm. But when you no longer have majority rule, then now democracy don't look as enticing as it did before. Mm-hmm. And you begin to wonder, will those people do the same thing to me that I did to them once they get power over me? I mean, you have to ask yourself that question. And invariably, they have said yes. And once you say yes to that question, then you have committed yourself to destroying democracy. Directly or indirectly, you have already committed yourself to destroying democracy. Donald Trump, the MAGA, all of them have committed themselves to destroying democracy.
All while they call themselves patriots.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Now, they are patriotic about white rule. Okay? That's where their patriotism is.
Yes.
Okay? But beyond that, they have no patriotism.
Yes.
All right? And so they have committed themselves to destroy democracy. Donald Trump said this would be the last election. Mm-hmm. He wasn't just blowing smoke.
Yeah.
He did not want elections to take place anymore in America. He wanted a white-dominated country. They don't have to have no elections. It's a dictatorship of some sort, where they simply call the shot. And they're trying to get to that point. And then when you look at the 2025 project, they put together a whole structure for this thing to happen. Mm-hmm. And they're pushing that agenda every day, right in our face as we speak. Now, the question is how far they can get with this thing, okay? And whether or not there's a percentage of the white population out there that say, I know it's not necessarily in my best interest as a white person, but justice should prevail, okay? Because it's not in the interest of no white person for justice really to prevail, all right, as far as they're concerned, all right? So that's where we're at. We're at the point where we're talking about a democratic system that white people can no longer afford and black people cannot execute by themselves, okay? And so invariably, it's going to
That is
crumble.
so profoundly and clearly stated. I haven't heard anyone anywhere state it more clearly and more profoundly, that they can no longer afford it. But I would contend that it is in their interests. Because if the democracy fails, everybody fails. If you're in a boat, and I don't care how many of the choice seats you had, if the boat goes down, it's like the Titanic. Ain't no good seats aboard it. And it's in everybody's interest to plug the hole. And for anyone to think that, well, I can't afford for this thing to stay afloat. No, we all need it to stay afloat. Then we can argue about who's sitting where, but we all need it to stay afloat, because once you throw off even the pretense of democracy, then everybody except rich, white, heterosexual men are going to end up in a bad seat.
Right. Right. They're willing to take that chance.
So anybody who aligns himself with the rich, white, heterosexual men to tank the democracy, thinking that aligning themselves with power is going to afford some benefit to them, once you kill the democracy, the only people who will be left when the music stops in this musical chairs will be the rich, white, heterosexual men.
You know, the biggest problem we got is Saturday and Sunday morning. Now, Saturday and Sunday morning is the most dangerous time in America for black people, because white men all over America get up, they turn their TV on, they have a cup of coffee, and then they watch nothing but black men run up and down the field, dribble a basketball, jump over stuff.
You preaching, Charlie.
And they watch that for 2 days. And their wife is sitting next to them flinching. What's wrong with you? When he goes to work Monday morning, he's already mad.
Because his wife was
He's already
salivating over them black men all
He's
weekend
already
long.
mad. He's already mad. Ain't a brother in there did nothing to him, said nothing wrong. They don't have to. He's already mad.
Because of Saturday and Sunday.
It comes to Saturday and Sunday. Huh? Okay? And so that's what we are in America.
Because even
right
the
now.
quarterback now is a black job.
Every one of them. All right? Every one of them. They all
Better not
black.
watch the NFL playoffs this weekend. They gonna all be voting for Josh Allen.
Matter of fact, I have changed over the last 40 years from rooting for a black quarterback. Now I'm rooting for a white quarterback. I want some white boys to come back. I need them. Yeah.
You said you need them to calm this thing down.
I need them. Because as long as there's some white boys out there, some brothers can get paid. But if we don't put some more white boys out there, this game is going to be dead.
But not even the most racist person in America wants to see an all-white NFL because all the stars are black.
I know it, but I'm saying, but they like to see some of themselves out there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's important.
Yeah.
It's just like when Larry Bird came to the NBA.
Oh, yeah.
And changed the whole
Look
dynamic.
at Caitlyn in the WNBA.
That's right. That's right. They got to have it.
Them sisters need to stop talking about her because she's making bread for all of
She's
them.
making money for all of them.
Yeah.
Okay? And so we got to understand the dynamics of where we are right now. Huh? All right? And use those dynamics. If I was the agent, I would be scouring the world right now for the best white quarterback I could find, the best dribbling white boy I can find on the basketball court, because I know that's where the money's at. Huh? I got to find that guy.
They got to at least have one great white hope.
I got to find him.
But
huh?
you said people like me who don't have to go into the business world on Monday, stay away because Monday's dangerous.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Monday's dangerous.
Kevin, you got some questions coming from online. What are they?
Yeah, see, that's why they're going overseas now.
Yeah, Charles Barkley asked the question. He was talking about Joker and Luka. And he said, how did it get to be in the NBA that the two best players are two fat white boys?
That's right. That's right.
Because we playing that European ball.
That's right.
Hey, man, Charlie, you say that we need to create a special environment that becomes a leader in the nation and prove that MLK's beloved community is possible. What does that mean to you? How do you see it, and what is your dream?
Of the kind of community?
Yes.
You know, the key to this whole thing to me is this. We don't need to worry about having a black residential community. That's a secondary concern. What we got to do is take a page out of the Asian book. The Asians live all over the city, but they got their own business community. They got a Chinatown. And from wherever they live, they all come to Chinatown to make money every day. Mm-hmm. That's what we need. We need to concentrate our effort on trying to find a corner that we can get 6 to 8 black businesses clustered on that corner and grow that corner outward until we can build us a black business district. Without a black business district, forget about the politics. We can't sustain it because we're not the ones that put money in the Congressional Black Caucus, all right? Mm-hmm. The Jewish lobby has more effective with the Congressional Black Caucus than any of us ever will be, because they determine whether or not they get elected and not us.
Which is the reasons why the Congressional Black Caucus did not push harder on the issue in Gaza.
That's right. That's right. Precisely the reason, okay? And those few who did lost in the last electoral round. And the rest of them saw that, okay? The message was clear. Mm-hmm. There's certain things that you don't do, all right? So that's what we are. We're caught between a rock and a hard place. We are a race of people who is a special consumer group that the whites, the Jews, and the Asians covet. They want our money. They want our consumer dollars. Mm-hmm. And all three of them will work hard to make sure we don't put together this black business community so that those consumer dollars can keep flowing into their pockets. Yeah. Okay? And so that's where we at. We are caught between a rock and a hard place. And again, we're the only group in America whose everything that we eat, everything that we wear, everything that we touch, the white community also eat, drink, touch, and wear. So everything that we have is in direct competition with them. We have no, so we're not like the Ethiopians who can bring a bunch of stuff from Ethiopia and sell it to their people and don't have to mess with the white business community. Or the Asians who can bring a bunch of stuff from China and sell it in Chinatown and it doesn't impact the white business community. Everything we do has to go to them. And if we make money, it's a net loss to them. That's our reality. Our success is always a net loss to them. Can't escape it.
So you say they're vested in our failure or underdevelopment.
That's right.
To maintain their market share.
That's right. That's right.
But that's part of the formerly enslaved reality.
That's right.
That it created economic dependency.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's why you had things like Tulsa, where they attacked the business district because they were outperforming the white businesses.
That's right.
So they burned down the black business district, so black folks had to go back to white folks, and that happened over. And whenever there's a successful black business district, white folks went after it, burned it down, so that black folks had to go back and spend their dollars on white businesses.
Right. And when you go back and look at the history of lynching, you realize the majority of those people that was hanging from trees were black businessmen.
Yes.
They weren't thieves, they weren't crooks, they were black businessmen.
And they wouldn't mess with nobody's white wife.
No. But they were saying the message, you don't mess with my money.
Yes.
Okay? All right? And so that's what we have.
Just being free, you done mess with my money.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Okay? And so the white community don't want to admit how important we are as consumers to them. All right? So they're gonna play this game with us to make sure. I mean, it's a very basic thing. I mean, I get it. There's no black hardware stores here. A black man want to open up a hardware store. He goes to the bank says, yeah, you can have the money, okay? And then he goes to the club and says, hey, I'm gonna loan this black man some money to do a hardware store. And the people who own hardware stores, hey man, why you messing, why you taking our money? So what do you mean? He says, 80% of all the black money is coming to us, and you gonna give them a hardware store? No. You can't come to the club no more, man. Get out of here. You violated the rules of the game here. Huh? And he called the brother the next day and said, man, I got to pull that loan. Huh? Some things came up on the paperwork I didn't see yesterday. I'm sorry, man, I can't do it now. Huh? Okay. And we're in that. That's our reality.
Yeah, we're really learning things tonight. This next question I have to ask, they said that you wrote an article called Mr. Charlie's World, and they'd like you to explain more about the description of the Gray Panthers.
Of the what now?
The Gray Panthers.
Oh, the Gray Panthers?
Yes.
I have enjoyed the Gray Panthers for a while because it's an elderly group that goes out and do political activity. And so I had told them that I wanted to start a chapter here, but I haven't got a chance to really do it because I realized that the elderly vote is so very crucial from an electoral position. Mm-hmm. Number one is that the elderly is going to vote on a regular basis. The youngsters may or may not show up, but the elderly is going to show up.
Yes.
And if you really organize the elderly effectively, then you can almost control the politics of an entire city if you can organize the elderly vote effectively. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that was my interest with the Gray Panthers. I'm not done with that. I want to get back to that at some point because it's at that level that you can do some multiracial things because elderly issues, it don't matter what age you are, it don't matter what race you are. Those elderly issues are going to be consistent across most age, racial groups. And
Medicare, prescriptions, senior care, all that.
That's right. And long as if you can build a coalition there, all right, and then throw some racial issues in there in the mix, you got something going on. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this underway, or is this something that you aiming for?
That's something I'm aiming for down the street. Right now, I'm working with Roger and them and Clyde. You know, and you talked to them a couple of weeks ago, trying to do the institute over in West Seattle. Okay. You know, and trying to finally get that in shape. You know, we just opened the doors on that a couple of weeks ago. I mean, the formal announcement and so we got a building in West Seattle that we tried to work out of and build something. That's the next step. 40 years ago this year was when we took over Coleman School and created the African American Museum. So it's 40 years ago that we took over Coleman School and created, it was the longest occupation of a public building in the history of America at Coleman School, 8-year occupation. But we got the African American Museum out of that. That was 40 years ago this year. And so being able to create the Institute 40 years later that will hopefully carry on or go beyond what the museum has done. Because quite frankly, I'll tell everybody, I've been very disappointed in what that museum has become. All right? It did not become what we had envisioned.
What did you all envision?
Well, first of all, we envisioned the whole building being a museum, not just the lower level. And we wanted something that really spoke to the community in a much clearer way about who we are, what we are. That museum down there, you won't see an African exhibit. You won't see a whole lot of different type of exhibits that I would put there. You would not see in that museum.
Do you think it's pedestrian compared to what you guys envisioned?
Yes, very much so.
Who put the ceiling on it, on the limits? Was it a funding issue? Was it a vision issue? Was it strong-armed by funders?
Well, we had strong-armed the building from the school district already. And so the Urban League came in on the backside of that, all right, and made a deal with the school district to buy the building and put the museum down there. But the Urban League wanted a housing program. They did not want a museum. And the museum was only thrown in, I mean, to appease us. Huh? They wanted housing. That's what they were after. And that's what they got. Okay? And the museum is still a very small piece of that building to this day. And it's going to remain that way. And they don't have no real passion down there to do a museum. That's the 11th largest museum in the nation, Black American Museum in the nation. But at the same time, it does not fulfill it. So what we're doing now is, like the interview they did with you, we have interviewed legends all over the Pacific Northwest, okay, about the history of this area. We're putting together some great tape, some great information about how all of this came together. And the fascinating piece of this is, in every black community in the Pacific Northwest, you see the same dynamics. You see AME church, and then a Baptist church will pop up 6 months later. Or you see a Baptist church and an AME church pop up 6 months later.
Yeah.
And both of them are founded at the same year or the year after each other, and the black community grows up around those two institutions, all right? And then the black business community pop up somewhere in between both of them, huh? Okay? You see these same dynamics happen. Huh? And so what we need to do is that we need to institutionalize these dynamics to understand how they work, and to be able to take these dynamics and say, okay, this is what you need for a black community to revitalize itself, to do what it needs to do. Here's how these institutions need to work with each other to make all of this other stuff work together.
Yeah.
Okay? And so that formula of how do you create a dynamic black community is what we're after now, along with the history of what we did in the past. Because that history can tell us a lot about what's possible for the future. Because again, the same, you see it, every black community in the Pacific Northwest, the AME church and the Baptist church pop up next to each other within 6 blocks of each other within the same year of creation. And between those two churches, the black community begins to grow.
Yeah.
All right? And you got to understand the dynamics of this thing. And then hopefully we can take that and interject that information into a community and watch it flourish, watch it grow, watch it begin to take wings and be a major community. But we're trying to figure out what are those pieces that are missing that creates a black community. Look at our history and see what we've done in the past, see what those things are that we can take now and bring to the present, all right, and make them work right now. So that's where we're at now, and it's a good place to be.
Kevin?
Yeah, good stuff. Last question that I have. We always talk about and ask for change. What are some of the things we need to do to achieve it as a people? And what are we doing wrong today that we're missing the mark?
We're trying to guess then, what does the questioner mean by change? I mean, I understand what the word change means, but was there any specificity?
None, no.
I think I can answer that question.
Okay.
And that actually, I'm gonna give you an answer that you probably didn't intend to get to, because it's one that's been worrying with me for the last 74 years. We got to realize who we are, and when I say who we are, it's this: we realize that everybody who's sitting in this room is a Native American. They're not African. They didn't come here in no slave ships. They are natives to this country. They are Native Americans. Everybody in this room is a Native American. They didn't come here on no slave ships. They was taking slaves in America. 80%, 90% of all the slaves in America were Native American slaves.
Yes.
They were not Africans.
Yeah.
Once you get that point clear, all right, about why you have this linkage to this land, why you feel like this about this land, all right, then you begin to build on that reality that this is your land, all right, and then you have every right to build what you need to build in this land and on this land. That perspective is important. Because we've been living with this thing about, oh, you came from Africa, this ain't your land, you're a stranger in this strange land. No, you're not. Huh? Okay? No, you're not. This is your land.
That's right.
And I've done an extraordinary amount of history. And that's one of the reasons I became a journalist, because being a journalist and being a historian are very similar. They're two of the same things. It helps you to dig up the truth. It helps you to go why, who, when, where. Okay, and put those pieces together and says, oh, there's a story here. that I hadn't seen before, or I need to get right. And so I'm trying to take those journalistic skills, apply them as a community organizer and as an activist, okay, to come up with a new reality for us as a people. And within that new reality, we can do the things that we need to do, okay? But we got to get past this game they put on us, that we was brought over here helplessly in some ships from Africa, all right? And we don't know where we came from, and we don't know where we're going. That's not the real story of America. So we need to tell that real story, and I think that would help Black Americans change their view, because most of our problem is how we see ourselves and how we see each other. That's most of our problem. We got to change that worldview.
So when you say that, are you, what about the person that hears that and suggests that you're saying we should just say we're American, drop the African, so we're not being intentional about the uniqueness of who we are?
Mm-hmm. No, I would contend that we simply call ourselves Black America. All right? Very simply, Black America.
So you like Black American versus African American?
I like Black America. But what we have become is an unofficial leader of the entire Black race in the whole world, whether or not we realize it or not. Mm-hmm. We are the leader of the entire Black race. Mm-hmm. Africa looks to us, all right?
Because we are the Black people in the empire.
That's right. That's right. And we represent 1/2 of 1% of the Black race.
But we have more wealth than the rest of them.
And intellect and insight, that's right, and leverage.
Yes.
Than the rest of them combined. So being Black Americans link us to the entire Black world out there.
Yeah.
And I think we need to do that because they're looking at us. And if you go and talk to Africans, you'll see that most of the major changes they've made in their lives in the last 80 years had to do with Marcus Garvey or Malcolm X or mm-hmm. Martin Luther King, or on and on and on. Mm-hmm. These people have totally impacted how they see themselves and how they see the world. And they're still looking for that kind of leadership mm-hmm. from us today. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to separate ourselves from that Black world. I just want people to realize that Black world used to be the entire planet. The entire planet used to be all Black. It wasn't just Africa. Mm-hmm. Every place on this planet was us. Mm-hmm. Okay? All right? We are the people that was in the Garden of Eden. Mm-hmm. And once you get that piece straight, the rest of it is easier to deal with. You begin to realize that you are indeed a special group of people. And every white historian out there have said that it's very clear that the very first people on this planet was the Negro race, and they were here for thousands of years before anyone else emerged. All right, and so we need to honor who we are and what God made us to be, because the real battle to me is how do I take care of God's children on this planet? That's my job.
Yeah.
All right, Black people are God's children. All right. They are the people in the Garden of Eden. They are the chosen people as far as I'm concerned, particularly these Black Americans who are probably the most special Black people or people ever created on this planet.
What do you anticipate over the next 4 years? What have you determined to be your mission over the next 4 years when there's such an aggressive attempt at a backward advance on the social gains in this country?
We're going to have a race for it at some point. I would gather that it's going to happen somewhere within the next 2 years. Hopefully it's going to be short. Hopefully it's going to be brief. It's going to happen.
That's kind of scary to me, given the fact that we're still only 12% of the population, and out of those 400 plus million guns on the streets of America that don't belong to the military or to the police, they own about 95% of those guns.
But this is the other piece to that they don't want to talk about. White people are only 10% of the planet.
Yeah, but a race war in America is not dealing with the planet, it's dealing with America.
I understand that. But what I'm saying is that they still got to deal with the rest of the world when it comes to us. The whole Black world will rally to us before it's all said.
You just said they don't have the money for a plane ticket to get here to help.
Well, no. And they don't. And they don't have the money.
Ain't nobody in Nigeria gonna be coming here helping me if they whooping me on Rainier Avenue.
I understand. I understand what you're saying. But this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that they being able to isolate us and wipe us out like that would mean that they have literally destroyed their base in America too. They can't run this country without us. They can't do it. They cannot run America without the help of Black America. We are just that important to the mechanics of this country. They want to control us. They don't want to get rid of us. They want to control us, all right? And that's where we're at right now, all right? Matter of fact, when you go back and look at how America was created, we realize that for the first 100 years of America, there was hardly no white folks over there. You know what I mean? There's a whole bunch of Black Europeans that was ran out of Europe that was over here building America. They was the one who created America, okay? That's why they say you got 5 Black presidents before George Washington. Yeah, this was all Black Europeans over here running America originally. And then somewhere around Abraham Lincoln, a coup happened, and white Europeans took over, okay? So it's a story that's a lot deeper than we have been told, okay? All right, and if there's a God, this place over here, okay, has to be special to God as well, because I believe that this is where the Garden of Eden was. It's in America. It wasn't in Africa. It wasn't in Europe. It was right here in America. All right.
Basically. You mean in some figurative sense?
No, huh?
You mean in a figurative sense?
No, I'm saying in a real sense. I'm saying that 60% of all the food we eat in the world come from Mexico and the area down there. All the food we eat in the world, 60% of it comes from the Mexico area down there.
But when you said the Garden of Eden is specifically between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, and that is where it is. That's where Babylon was. That's where Iraq is now.
No, we're talking about 2 time zones, okay? We're talking about before the flood and after the flood. After the flood, that's where it was. Before the flood, it was in America. Let me explain this again. You had 2 creations. Man was first created in the Garden of Eden, and then everything was wiped out 11,500 years ago by the Great Flood. And then we had to recreate again. All of our history is about the second creation, all right, after the flood, all right? And we only have 5,000 of that, all right, that we know about. We don't know anything more than that last 5,000 or 6,000 years, all right? So what appears to have happened, Doc, is this. When you look at all of the hominids in the world, you realize that all of the hominids, most of them came from Africa. The hominids that we talk about that created man. But if you look at it from a scientific perspective, if you go and grab some hominids from Africa and create man, do you want man to remix in all those hominids in Africa? You destroyed your whole point if you do. No, you pick them up and you bring them to a place that there was no other hominids. And those places was in South America. There was no hominids. There's no other hominids in America except Homo sapiens sapien. There's nothing to mix in over here. This is where Atlantis was, just off the coast of America. Okay? All right? All right? All right? And when you go and look at the history, they left here and went to Egypt after Atlantis went down. Okay? And so it's a story. What does the Bible say about the ark? It says that he was specifically told to go and use wormwood. Wormwood is a wood that I want you to build an ark with. I looked for wormwood. I looked all over the world for wormwood. I found it one place on the Florida-Carolina border. It don't exist no place else in the world. Okay? And then when you look at the way what do you call it, the dynamics of the ocean, the currents of the ocean, the currents of the ocean would take you right from Florida, right over there to Turkey, where the ark ended up at. And it take you there in that time frame too.
Well, honestly, I'm still stuck at this race war you was talking about.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to come back and visit that on another occasion. But it is something that I do think that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that with the current violent rhetoric and with the extreme agenda of Donald Trump and the people around him and the people he just let out of prison and the message that it sends, that he is willing to, that if you commit political violence on his behalf, he's got your back. You're not going to be held accountable, which will encourage more of the same type of violence.
Right.
And with him picking attorney generals, and I tell people the only reason why you got George Floyd, you got Chavez in prison for killing George Floyd is because you had a black attorney general in that state to bring charges. And the reason why you didn't get it justice for Breonna Taylor in Kentucky is because while you had a black attorney general, he was married to Mitch McConnell's daughter.
That's right.
And so who you have in place determines what cases are brought forward and what cases are brought. So when you look at all of this, it says to me that there's going to be a very heavy-handed crackdown. And my reading of history is that people like Donald Trump, they always overreach. They always overreach. And again, it's lighting the fire, but you can't tell how the winds are going to blow. And so, you know, I believe that there's a God behind history, and I'm hoping and praying, and I can't control God, but that God will somehow or another step in and save us from ourselves, save us from those who seek to do wicked. I still believe there's a God that can make the wicked cease from troubling and the weary be at rest. I don't know how long it's going to take and how much pain we're going to go through before that happens, but I live and breathe in living in faith and trust in that God. But that does not mean that I stand passively and idly by. It means that we have agency.
That's right.
We do what we can to push a redemptive and just agenda while we're waiting on God to do the things that only God can do in turning the tides and the pendulum of history. We're going to have to leave it there for today because our time is up. In fact, we're 8 minutes past our time. I want to thank the iconic, historic, one and only Charlie James for coming by and visiting us here for the first time on Conversations with the Pastor. And we're going to bring him back again. Stay engaged, people. On tomorrow night, I will be at the University of Puget Sound in the Kilworth Chapel at 7 p.m. for their annual MLK Day program that is being combined with the Swope Spring Endowed Lecture Series. So we encourage all of you to come out and be there. We're going to talk about moral leadership in an immoral empire.
Are you the keynote?
Yes, and we look forward to you being there for that. In the meantime, take care of your health, take care of your wealth, take care of your loved ones, and we'll see you back here next week, same time, same bat channel, right here on Conversations with the Pastor. God bless you.
Thank you for joining Conversations with the Pastor here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. You can also join us for worship service every Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Come on down this Sunday. We got something special for you. See you next week.